Hey everybody, welcome to another Rational Actualization video. Today I'll be introducing the concept of unconditional self-acceptance. This is one of the three core principles for healthy living advocated in Rational Emotive Behaviour Therapy. It's a unique concept of REBT compared to other forms of therapy, and it draws heavily from various Eastern and Western philosophies. To put it simply, the REBT notion of unconditional self-acceptance is simply the principle of not evaluating your entire personhood or being. You give up the game of rating yourself as worthy or unworthy, as good or bad, and simply get on with the game of enjoying yourself in life. Now, many people may not realize this, but the concept of self-esteem is actually the practice of self-rating. You see, when you have high self-esteem, that means you view yourself as having a high personal value or worth. And when you have low self-esteem, you see yourself as having low or even negative value as a person. And this value that you place on yourself is completely subjective and dependent on your own arbitrary rules for self-esteem. People usually base their self-worth on things such as performing well or achieving great accomplishments in areas that they value, having socially desirable traits such as physical attractiveness, intelligence, social charisma, or physical athleticism, or even basing your worth on things that you own, such as having a mansion or multiple yachts, driving a Ferrari, and some people even base their self-esteem on the desirability of their partner. In Rational Emotive Behaviour Therapy, self-esteem is actually viewed as a flawed and dangerous practice. Now, there are four main reasons for this. One is that self-esteem is viewed as a myth that we humans simply conjure up in our heads. It doesn't exist in objective reality outside of human beings. I can't take a DNA sample from you, do a genetic analysis, and extract your inherent value as a human being from that. Your self-worth isn't inherent in your biology or in the world. The only place it really exists is in your head. It's purely a fiction of your imagination. You've simply defined your own self-esteem based on certain characteristics that you either live up to or you don't live up to. Even if we can agree on a set of objective criteria to determine human worth, evaluating your self-worth constantly is simply a lost cause. Because if your self is the sum total of everything that you do, then yourself is not static, but always changing, every year, every month, every week, and even every day. The person who you think you are right now is not going to line up exactly with the person you're going to be in a year. So what's the point? And to evaluate your self-worth accurately, you need to account for every single thing you've done your entire life. Every week, you commit and experience hundreds or thousands of different actions, thoughts, and emotions. Some of these are good, some are bad, and some are neutral. Now, do you think you can remember every single thing you've done in the past week, let alone the past month, let alone your entire life? To evaluate your self-worth accurately, you're going to need to list all these things down, run it through some sort of self-esteem algorithm or calculator, and only then can you attain a relatively objective self-worth evaluation. Since you can't calculate your worth based upon everything that you do, that means whatever value you provide to yourself is always going to be inaccurate and only based upon whatever characteristics or behaviors you're currently paying attention to. And because many people have an innate tendency to dwell on the negatives more than the positives, this may mean that you're biased to putting yourself down, not because you have an abundance of negative traits, but simply because you place more emotional attention on those supposed negative attributes or behaviors. This is known as the negativity bias. And a final practical reason is that if your self-esteem depends upon you performing well, having desirable traits, or owning desirable things, then your self-esteem disappears or plummets whenever you perform badly, when you no longer have those desirable traits or you no longer have those desirable items. This means that to maintain a high level of self-esteem, you either need to be an absolutely perfect human being for your entire life, or you need to be dishonest with yourself whenever you perform badly. Clearly, it's not possible to maintain such a high level of perfection over your lifespan. Furthermore, when you're dishonest about your flaws or negative behaviors, people can often see through this and may end up resenting you. So what this means for most of us who hold onto the concept of self-esteem is that it's not stable. It's constantly fluctuating depending on how well we're doing in life and also how honest we can actually be with ourselves. For these reasons, People that cling onto self-esteem will experience a host of ego-related issues, such as feelings of worthlessness, performance anxiety, perfectionism, denial of bad actions, feeling inferior to other people, jealousy, making important life decisions trying to prove yourself instead of simply enjoying yourself in life, social anxiety, and failing to act assertively. Now, some of you may be thinking that these symptoms only affect people with low self-esteem, and that if I have high self-esteem, I can't possibly experience any of those negative symptoms. But you'd be surprised to learn that this is actually not true either. In fact, many people with high self-esteem will experience those unhealthy symptoms simply as a result of trying to maintain their self-esteem level. For example, someone with high self-esteem may still suffer from an unhealthy level of perfectionism because they're so desperate to cling onto their high self-esteem and feelings of superiority. They can also still feel anxious about their performance because they know that if they do poorly, they'll be forced to think lesser of themselves and their self-esteem will decrease. A poor performance is a threat to their own self-worth. So self-esteem is really a double-edged sword. When you're doing well in life, you benefit from feeling great about yourself, but can still suffer from perfectionism, being in denial, and feelings of anxiety. And you're always at risk of having low self-esteem. For all these reasons, it seems better to do away with the concept of self-esteem altogether. Rational Emotive Behaviour Therapy suggests the alternative solution of unconditional self-acceptance. Refuse to provide a value judgment on yourself, whether good or bad, and simply accept yourself. Recognize that you're a complex and ever-changing combination of thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and personality traits. And therefore, your so-called self is far too complex to give a single overarching label or rating. Whereas a stable sense of high self-esteem is only available to those rare individuals who can perform well consistently, unconditional self-acceptance is available to everybody, regardless of how well you're performing in life. The key point to understand here is that rational emotive behavior therapy makes a distinction between yourself and the individual behaviors and traits that make up this self. You are never your individual actions. The mistake everybody makes is that as soon as they do one negative thing, they overgeneralize this action to their entire being, and they say, because I did this one negative action, that makes me, my entire being, negative in nature. Now, I hope it's obvious now why that is not true, for you've also done many positive things in your life. And just as one positive act doesn't turn you into a saint, one negative act doesn't turn you into a demon. Condemn the action, but not the entire being that committed the action. For once again, that being, that person, or you, is ever changing. So when we advocate for unconditional self-acceptance, we're not saying never feel bad about negative actions or never feel good about positive actions. We say feel good or feel bad about those actions, but not your entire personhood. Let's go through an example. So let's say that you've been meaning to start an assignment that you've been aware of for a few weeks. Somehow you managed to procrastinate that assignment until the very last day, and after a stressful caffeine-fueled effort, you managed to submit the assignment on time. Now this is not an action that you'd like to repeat, so you consider it a negative behavior. From a rational emotive behavior therapy standpoint, there's absolutely nothing illogical about that, about considering that a negative behavior and feeling bad about it. The problem begins when you generalize that behavior, the badness of that behavior, to your entire self, and you put your entire self down instead of simply feeling bad about procrastinating. So in this example, you have one thought, which is that procrastinating was stupid, let's try to avoid that in the future. But then you add an extra belief, saying, I am so stupid or worthless for doing this single act. Now, in addition to feeling bad about yourself, when you do this, you tend to reinforce a negative image of yourself and box yourself into an identity of a lazy or worthless person. Ironically enough, this tends to make you more likely to procrastinate again in the future. And the negative emotions associated with your self-criticism tend to make it more difficult for you to actually be productive when you need to be. Because when you're actually trying to do the task, you're now going to be so wrapped up with repeating negative thoughts to yourself in the moment that it actually detracts from your ability to stay focused purely on the task. Instead, you're juggling your focus between the task itself and criticizing yourself repeatedly. However, if you only felt bad about the action, that would reinforce your belief that procrastination is bad, and it would motivate you to avoid procrastinating in the future. These are good things. And you get to avoid boxing yourself into a specific identity and avoiding the unhealthy feelings associated with self-doubting. When you're able to accept yourself without condition, it frees you up to live your life for happiness instead of self-worth. So be kind to yourself. Decide to stop rating yourself and just accept yourself. Rate only your actions but not your entire being. Choose unconditional self-acceptance and throw conditional self-esteem into the bin. And for those wondering how to actually get unconditional self-acceptance, the ultimate and simple answer is that you decide to either unconditionally accept yourself or to conditionally accept yourself. Now, others may help you get to the point of unconditional self-acceptance, but nobody magically bestows either self-worth or unconditional self-acceptance upon you. Even trained psychologists and clinicians don't do so. Even watching this video doesn't magically help you achieve unconditional self-acceptance. It's up to you to either be persuaded by these arguments or not. You alone have the direct power to attain unconditional self-acceptance or to stay on the roller coaster ride of conditional self-esteem. Now, I really hope this video was helpful. I do want to continue to make more videos, so you can let me know by liking and subscribing, and feel free to suggest future topics you'd like me to cover in the comment section as well. So thanks for watching and happy living.